Well, the trial starts today in Philadelphia for the pro-life father of 7 who was arrested by the FBI in an early morning raid last September. Several dozen supporters were outside the courtroom today. Mark Houck is charged with violating federal law for repeatedly assaulting a Planned Parenthood volunteer in 2021, a charge he strongly denies. Jury selection took part this morning. The case could be wrapped up by the end of the week. If convicted, Houck faces 11 years in prison. Joining us tonight is attorney Matt Heffron with more on what to expect in the courtroom this week. Matt, great to be with you. I know that you feel that you have a pretty good case on your hands here. How do you see this all playing out, and what does a best case scenario look like?
Well, best case scenario would be obviously an acquittal either by the judge on the law or by a jury if it goes all the way to the jury. Tracy, we're thinking it'll probably be about a 2-day case. Could be 1 day, but that would be highly unusual. And quite honestly, it's a very simple case. In fact, almost in some ways kind of silly if it had not been for the Department of Justice bringing this case. That's why it's so short.
Yeah, and for our viewers who maybe are new to this story, if you don't mind, can you briefly, tell us about that FBI raid on Mark Houck's home and how it really threw this case into the national spotlight?
Sure. It actually started well before that national raid in that the federal prosecutor had sent Mark Houck what's known as a target letter. And that usually means that the grand jury is considering a case. And I was contacted. And I did what I always do with in a white collar case like this. I contacted the prosecutor. I left 2 phone messages over time saying that it didn't look like they had any case here, but that if she were going to want to indict this individual, we would bring him in peacefully so that he and his family wouldn't be bothered. She never responded to me. And I'll tell you, in 20 years of doing that, I used to be a federal prosecutor in charge of one of the criminal divisions of Phoenix office before that. But in 20 years of being a defense attorney, I had never once not had a prosecutor respond to me. The next thing I heard, in fact, it was from this prosecutor, saying that they had stormed Mark's house and had taken him in under arrest instead of walking him in peacefully. They had some 20 FBI agents, maybe, in fact, it was kind of funny later, the FBI quibbled about it. Well, they didn't have 20, they had maybe 15. That's a huge number, especially when they're all with guns drawn and armor on, going to someone who's an absolutely peaceful person, completely peaceful background, and arrested him 7 in the morning in front of his 7 children and wife. It's an awful situation. And for all the years that I was with the Department of Justice, I would never have expected something like this to happen through the Department of Justice.
Yeah, it really is unbelievable.
Well, that's the background. It is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear a little bit about the facts of the case, this is why it's even more unbelievable. The facts happened a year earlier, a year before the arrest, and they were very much just the case of a scuffle on a sidewalk. One of the people who call himself an escort, and actually they're there primarily to harass the pro-life counselors, was harassing Mark Houck. Mark Houck wasn't even close to the door of the clinic. He was down on the corner praying a rosary with his 12-year-old son. And this escort came back repeatedly and had done so in the past, saying vile things to Mark's son. And finally, Mark gave him a shove. That's the whole case. That's the whole case. A shove on the sidewalk. The fellow fell down, scraped his knee, and got up and went inside.
It's so hard to believe.
It's unbelievable that they would make a federal case out of this.
Yeah, it really is.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah. No. I'm so sorry. We're almost out of time, but quickly, I want to ask you, before we wrap things up here, Matt, I mean, how is Mark and his family doing after all this? Obviously pretty traumatic, and especially his children. They were all home at the time of that raid.
They were, yeah, and it traumatized the kids. Mark is a very tough guy, a good Christian guy. And I should tell you as well that one other point, Tracy, here, knowing that you're going to wrap this up, the Thomas More Society has 3 attorneys out there. We have 3 also on the home front. And they have found something that hasn't ever been delivered in one of these FACE cases. And that is the fact that when FACE was first passed back in 1994, the senators discussing it specifically excluded escorts from being protected. That FACE is to narrowly protect only those who are actually attempting to obtain or provide medical or counseling services. It does not protect escorts. That's what Michael found. That's what we dropped on the judge in the objections to jury instructions last week. We think that should be deciding in this case, and it'll be great if that does come about.
Yeah, and we're going to be following this case very closely. Matt, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us. Please keep us posted.
All right. Thanks, Tracy.